All right, listeners. So today we're going deep on something pretty interesting, and that is the New Age movement.
Okay.
Our source is Mystery Mark of the New Age, and it seems to be laying out a full-blown conspiracy theory.
Wow.
Yeah, we're talking about a mysterious mark, a new world order, and even ties to the biblical mark of the beast.
Okay.
I'm already kind of getting chills, so let's jump right in and see what we can uncover.
Sure.
Um,
What's interesting is that this source doesn't really present the New Age as some future thing.
right.
It argues that it's already woven into our world, working behind the scenes, in ways we might not realize.
So it's not just yoga studios and crystals then?
Not exactly. The source claims the New Age movement is built on this idea that humanity is evolving towards godhood.
Okay.
And there's this coming Messiah figure who will help tear down the old world and build a new order.
Dismantle the world as we know it. That sounds a bit intense.
It's definitely a radical concept.
Yeah.
And what's even wilder is that the source claims this movement has some serious players. Oscar winners, politicians, even theologians.
You're kidding. So it's not just a fringe group.
Not according to this source, no.
Wow.
They even mention J. Peter Grace, a multimillionaire conducting seminars at Windstar, a New Age community. So.
That's pretty unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
So what about this mysterious mark they keep mentioning? Is this like some secret handshake or something?
Well, that's where things get really creepy.
Oh, right.
The source claims there's a physical mark associated with the New Age.
Right.
And they connect it directly to the biblical mark of the beast.
Really?
They even bring up Whitley Strieber.
Okay.
You know, the guy who claimed he woke up with a mark after an alleged alien encounter.
Whoa, alien encounters.
Yeah.
This is getting stranger by the minute. Do they say what this mark looks like, or is it a tattoo, a microchip? I have so many questions.
The source is vague on the specifics, but emphasizes the fear surrounding it.
Right.
Some initiates describe feeling intense dread before receiving the mark.
Okay, that sends shivers down my spine. But wait, they're afraid of it, but they still go through with it. Why?
Well, the source claims that after accepting the mark, these initiates experience a sudden shift.
Okay.
They describe feelings of intense joy, peace, and even a sense of being chosen. Almost like a switch flips in their minds.
Wow, talk about a roller coaster of emotions.
Right.
You go from terrified to blissful, just like that. This is giving me major cult vibes. What do you think, listener?
Yeah.
Does any of this sound familiar to you?
It's definitely a lot to unpack. And this brings us to another key element in the source.
Okay.
The importance of symbols in the New Age.
Right. They talk about how symbols are like conduits for energy communication with the spiritual realm.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't that kind of similar to religious symbolism in general?
There are certainly parallels, but the source highlights how the New Age twists traditional symbols, often inverting their meaning.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Tell me more.
Well, they focus a lot on the triangle.
Which they say represents the unholy trinity of Satan, the Antichrist, and demonic forces.
Okay.
And when the triangle points downwards, it symbolizes the sun god Horus.
Hold on, Horus, isn't that an ancient Egyptian god?
Yeah.
What does he have to do with the New Age?
That's a great question. The source seems to suggest that the New Age draws inspiration from various ancient traditions,
Okay.
including Egyptian mythology. They even mention the Lucis Trust,
Okay.
formerly known as Lucifer Publishing,
Well, this is for publishing.
which believes the triangle is a channel to Shambhala, the spirit kingdom of Lord Maitreya.
Okay. Things are officially getting creepy now.
Yeah.
This is giving me some serious Da Vinci Code vibes.
It's certainly a lot to take in.
Yeah.
And we're just scratching the surface. The source also dives into the symbolism of the sun,
Right.
which according to them represents the Father God and is sometimes even depicted as housing angels.
Wait, angels living in the sun?
Yeah.
Isn't that a little different from the Christian view of things?
It's definitely a stark contrast. And then there's the rainbow, specifically linked to Maitreya and the transition to the Aquarian Age.
So even the rainbow, a symbol of hope and peace in many cultures, gets a new meaning in the New Age context.
It seems that way.
Ah.
And there are so many more symbols discussed. The all-seeing eye crystals, pyramids, even mythical creatures like dragons and unicorns.
Okay.
It's like they've created their own symbolic language.
Okay, so they've got their symbols, their secret rituals, their powerful players. But what's the end game here? What are they actually trying to achieve?
Well, that's a great question and something we are going to dive into next time.
All right, listener. So we'll see you on the next deep dive.
So yeah, well, the source paints a pretty terrifying picture of their vision for the future.
Okay.
They believe in a coming New Age Christ
Okay.
who will establish a one-world government and religion.
Okay, so we're talking full-on New World Order conspiracy theory territory here.
Exactly. And according to this source, Christians are seen as a major obstacle to their plan.
Why Christians specifically?
The source suggests it's because Christian beliefs, with their emphasis on individual salvation and moral absolutes,
Right.
are fundamentally incompatible with the New Age's vision of collective evolution and a fluid subjective morality.
So basically we're seen as sticks in the mud, holding back their spiritual progress.
That's one way to put it, and the source doesn't shy away from the dark implications of this clash.
Okay.
It quotes New Age leaders who see violence and bloodshed as a necessary purification
Hold on.
to cleanse the earth and make way for their new order.
Wait, are they talking about killing Christians?
They use terms like elimination and removal,
Wow.
and they even cite specific numbers.
Really?
One leader predicts potential 2.5 billion deaths.
2.5 billion. That's just unfathomable. It's hard to believe anyone could seriously advocate for such a thing.
And yet, the source presents this as a chillingly real possibility,
Wow.
a core belief within certain factions of the New Age movement.
This is heavy stuff. So they've got their twisted symbols, their plans for a new world order, and this terrifying vision of eliminating anyone who gets in their way.
Yeah.
It's like something out of a dystopian novel.
Yeah.
Where does this image of the beast fit into all of this?
That's where the source gets even more intriguing.
Okay.
They suggest the image might not be a physical statue or idol,
Right.
but rather a mental construct created through visualization techniques.
So instead of bowing down to a golden calf, they're bowing down to something they've created in their own minds.
That's the idea. The source describes occult practices like visualization and guided imagery being used to manipulate symbols and essentially bring them to life within the mind. It's almost like creating a virtual reality experience of worship.
It's like they've taken the concept of idolatry and digitized it.
It's a chilling thought, isn't it? And what's even more unsettling is that the source connects this to the work of figures like Carl Jung and the rise of modern psychology.
So they're suggesting that these practices are becoming more widespread and accepted,
Right.
that we're being primed to accept this kind of mental manipulation.
It's definitely a thought-provoking idea. The source seems to be implying that by normalizing techniques like visualization and guided imagery,
Right.
we're inadvertently opening ourselves up to this kind of spiritual manipulation.
This is making me rethink my whole meditation app subscription.
Yeah.
I mean, could something as simple as a guided meditation be used to subtly influence our beliefs? What do you think, listener? Are we more susceptible to this kind of mental programming than we realize?
It's a question worth pondering. And it ties into the source's final point about initiation into the New Age.
Okay.
They claim that true initiation involves a spiritual shift, accepting Lucifer as Lord.
Wait a minute. Lucifer as in the devil.
That's right. The source describes this as a Luciferian revelation,
Okay.
a key part of the mystery of iniquity.
But wouldn't most people run for the hills if someone straight up told them to worship Lucifer?
That's where the deception comes in.
Okay.
The source claims the New Age cleverly rebrands Lucifer, presenting him not as Satan, but as a good angel, a being of light and knowledge.
So it's like a spiritual bait and switch.
Exactly. They're using alluring language and imagery to mask the true nature of evil. It's a classic tactic, really. Make the darkness look appealing, make the lie sound like truth.
This is all starting to feel very matrixy.
Right.
Like we're living in a world of illusions and most people don't even realize they're plugged into the system.
It's a powerful analogy. And according to this source, that's exactly what the New Age is trying to do.
Okay.
Create a system of belief that entraps people in a web of deception.
Okay, so we've got this whole conspiracy laid out, the symbols, the rituals, the mark the New Age, Christ, the persecution of Christians, the worship of Lucifer. It's a lot to take in, and honestly, it's pretty terrifying. Is there any hope here?
Well, the source does offer a glimmer of hope. It reminds us that the Christian perspective provides an alternative narrative,
Okay.
counterpoint to the darkness.
Thank goodness I was starting to lose all faith in humanity. What does this Christian perspective offer?
It reminds us that the Bible prophesies the return of Jesus Christ, who will ultimately defeat evil and establish his kingdom. It's a reminder that despite the darkness and deception, there is a higher power at work, a force for good that will ultimately triumph.
So it's a battle, but one that we know the outcome of.
Exactly. And that knowledge can give us strength and courage to face the challenges ahead. The source emphasizes that ultimately each person has to choose whom to serve,
Right.
God or the forces of darkness.
It's a stark choice, but one that we can't afford to ignore. But, all this talk about symbols and conspiracies, it can feel very abstract and distant. How does any of this affect our everyday lives? What are the practical implications of all this?
That's a great question, and I think it's important to remember that these symbols and beliefs aren't just confined to some shadowy underworld. They're woven into the fabric of our culture, often in subtle and insidious ways.
Give me an example.
Well, think about the prevalence of occult symbols in advertising entertainment, even fashion. Triangles, pyramids, all-seeing eyes, they're everywhere. And while some people might dismiss them as harmless or meaningless, the source argues that they're actually part of a deliberate strategy to normalize these symbols and desensitize us to their true meaning.
So it's like a form of subliminal messaging, slowly conditioning us to accept these ideas without even realizing it.
Exactly. They're planting seeds in our subconscious minds, making the unfamiliar seem familiar, even desirable.
Yeah, it's pretty sneaky. So what can we do about it? How do we protect ourselves from this kind of insidious influence?
The source stresses the importance of discernment, of being able to recognize and reject the deceptive tactics of the New Age. It's about being aware of the symbols, understanding their true meaning, and being critical of the messages we're bombarded with on a daily basis.
So knowledge is power.
Knowledge, awareness, and a firm grounding in our own beliefs. We need to be rooted in truth, so we're not swayed by the winds of deception.
I have to admit, all this talk about a mark being forced on people is pretty unsettling. But shouldn't we be seeing more evidence of this if it's supposed to be such a widespread phenomenon?
That's a valid point. And the source addresses this by suggesting that the New Age is already preparing us for the acceptance of the mark in subtle ways.
Like how?
Well, they point to the increasing popularity of things like microchipping pets,
Right.
wearable technology, and even biometric scanning. They argue that these technologies are slowly normalizing the idea of having a physical identifier,
Okay.
making it less jarring when the mark is eventually introduced.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. It's like they're acclimating us to the idea one step at a time.
Exactly. It's a gradual process of desensitization, making the unthinkable seem more palatable.
Earlier you mentioned the guy named Richard who received the mark.
Yeah.
Does the source go into any more detail about his experience?
They do, and it's pretty chilling. They describe how Richard was filled with dread beforehand, mirroring the fear many initiates describe. But after receiving the mark, his fear completely vanished. He was overcome with feelings of joy, peace, and a sense of being chosen.
That's wild. It's like they flipped a switch in his brain, turning his fear into euphoria. I mean, could there be a psychological component at play here?
It's certainly possible. The source suggests that receiving the mark isn't just a physical act.
Okay.
It's a spiritual and psychological transformation as well.
So it's not just a mark on the skin, it's like a mark on the soul.
Exactly. And this transformation, according to the source, is a key part of the initiation process. It's about fundamentally altering someone's perception of reality, aligning them with the New Age's Luciferian worldview.
Okay, that's starting to make sense.
Yeah.
But let's back up for a second and talk more about these symbols. You mentioned the triangle being a big one.
Right.
They call it the supreme symbol of New Age Satanism.
Right.
What other insights do they offer about it?
They go pretty deep into its history, tracing it back to ancient Egypt. They explain how the Egyptians viewed the triangle as representing the unholy trinity of their three chief deities, Sut-Shu and Horus.
So even back then, they were using the triangle to mock the Christian concept of the Holy Trinity.
It seems so. The source emphasizes this idea of inversion,
Right.
taking symbols of light and twisting them into symbols of darkness, and the triangle is a prime example. Even the direction it points has meaning. A downward-pointing triangle represents Horus the sun god, while an upward-pointing triangle symbolizes Set the destroyer god.
So they've managed to pack a whole lot of dark symbolism into one simple shape.
Exactly, and they connect it to modern groups like the Temple of Set in San Francisco,
Right.
led by a self-proclaimed high priest of Satan.
Okay, now that's just creepy. But what's interesting is they also mention Hindus revering the triangle. Are they saying Hindus are part of the satanic conspiracy too?
Not necessarily. They're pointing out that the triangle, particularly the downward-pointing one, has a different meaning in Hinduism.
Okay.
They see it as a symbol of the female triangle of life, associated with feminine energy and creation.
So the same symbol can have very different meanings depending on the context.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to understand the nuances of symbolism and not jump to conclusions.
Right.
But in the New Age context, the source is pretty clear that the triangle is predominantly used as a symbol of dark forces.
Okay, so the triangle is bad news. What about the sun? Surely that can't be a bad symbol, can it?
Well, even the sun gets a sinister makeover in the New Age.
Okay.
Remember their belief that humanity is evolving toward godhood.
Right, we're all supposed to become little mini-gods.
And the sun, in this context, represents the ultimate source of that divine power. It's seen as the Father God, who will bestow upon us our godlike abilities. The source even quotes New Age leaders who espouse this divine sun doctrine.
So it's not about worshiping the sun itself, but rather the power. It represents the power to become gods ourselves.
Exactly. And that power, according to the New Age, is accessible to anyone who aligns themselves with the right frequencies and vibrations. They even talk about the sun being a portal to other dimensions.
Like a cosmic doorway to the realm of the gods.
You could say that. And they offer several examples of New Age teachers and leaders who promote this idea.
Yeah.
There's Ken Carey, who teaches that angels live inside the center of the sun.
Wow.
And John Randolph Price, who claims to receive messages from an entity calling itself Helios, who encourages New Agers to be the cup, the Holy Grail.
Wow, they've really built a whole mythology around the sun. But isn't there a danger in worshiping the creation rather than the creator?
That's a key point. By worshiping the sun, they're essentially worshiping the power it represents.
Right.
Which, according to the source, is ultimately the power of Lucifer.
So it's a subtle but effective way of redirecting worship away from the true God.
Precisely, and that subtle redirection is a key strategy in their plan to usher in their New World Order.
Here we've got the triangle, the sun. What other symbols does the source highlight?
Well, they talk about the rainbow, which is often associated with Maitreya, the New Age Christ figure.
All right, I remember them saying the rainbow symbolizes the transition to the Aquarian Age, a time of peace and harmony.
But it's important to remember that this peace and harmony, according to the New Age, will only be achieved through the elimination of those who oppose their agenda.
So the rainbow isn't really a symbol of hope, but rather a symbol of conquest and domination.
That's a chilling way to put it, but unfortunately I think it's accurate based on this source. They also talk about the all-seeing eye, another powerful symbol in the New Age.
Oh yeah, you mean the eye you see on the back of the dollar bill?
Yep.
The one inside the pyramid?
That's the one. And in the New Age context, it represents the watchful gaze of Lucifer,
right,
who sees all and knows all.
It's like Big Brother on a cosmic scale.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the source points out the prevalence of the all-seeing eye in various settings.
Okay.
From the United Nations Meditation Room to the Great Seal of the United States.
It's almost like they're taunting us with their symbols, knowing that most people are oblivious to their true meaning.
That's what makes it so insidious. It operates in plain sight, hidden in symbols that most people dismiss as harmless or meaningless.
Well, I'm not dismissing them as harmless anymore. What other symbols do they mention?
They touch on a whole host of others. Crystals, pyramids, dragons, serpents, unicorns, even mermaids.
Are mermaids.
Seriously.
What could a mermaid possibly symbolize?
In the New Age, mermaids are often seen as symbols of feminine power.
Okay.
Spiritual awakening and the allure of the occult. They represent the seductive nature of Lucifer's lies, drawing people into the depths of the unknown.
It's like they're using these seemingly innocuous symbols to lure people into a world of darkness.
That's the danger of symbolism. It can be used to manipulate and deceive. That's why it's so important to be aware of these symbols and their true meanings. We need to be able to see through the deception and recognize the danger for what it is.
It sounds like they're predicting a perfect storm of global chaos. Economic collapse, natural disasters, and social unrest. It's all very apocalyptic.
It definitely has that doomsday vibe. But remember, they see all this chaos as a necessary precursor to their utopian New World Order. It's like the birthing pains of a new era.
I guess that's one way to look at it. But for those of us who aren't buying into their New Age utopia, it all sounds pretty terrifying.
It's understandable to feel that way. But the source reminds us that the Christian perspective offers a different lens through which to view these events. Instead of seeing them as the birth pangs of a new age, they see them as signs of the end times, a prelude to the return of Jesus Christ.
So while the New Agers are looking forward to their New World Order, Christians are looking forward to the second coming of Christ.
Exactly. And that perspective can offer a sense of hope and purpose in the midst of all the uncertainty and turmoil.
It's like two completely different narratives playing out on the same stage.
Yeah.
But it's easy to get caught up in all these grand narratives, these cosmic battles between good and evil. It can feel very overwhelming, very abstract. How does any of this relate to our everyday lives? What are the practical implications of all this?
That's a great question. And I think the key takeaway here is that these New Age beliefs aren't just some fringe ideology. They're seeping into our culture, influencing everything from politics to entertainment to personal growth movements.
So it's not just about some shadowy cabal of New Age elites pulling the strings.
Not necessarily. The source suggests that it's more subtle than that. It's about ideas and beliefs filtering down into the mainstream, often disguised in appealing language and imagery.
Give me an example.
Well, think about the popularity of concepts like manifesting and the law of attraction.
Right.
These ideas, which have roots in New Age thought, are now widely embraced in personal development circles, promising people the power to create their own reality and attract wealth, success, and happiness.
Right. I see those books and courses everywhere. It's all about positive thinking and visualizing your goals. What's wrong with that?
On the surface, there's nothing inherently wrong with positive thinking or visualization, but the danger lies in the underlying belief that we are the ultimate creators of our reality,
Yeah.
that we have the power to bend the universe to our will.
And that belief contradicts the Christian view of God as the ultimate creator and sovereign of the universe.
Exactly. It's a subtle shift in perspective, but it has profound implications. It places us at the center of our own universe rather than God. And it can lead to a sense of entitlement and self-reliance that can be spiritually harmful.
So it's like a form of spiritual pride.
You could say that. And it can blind us to our need for God's grace and guidance.
Okay, so we need to be aware of how these New Age ideas can creep into our lives, even in seemingly harmless ways. But what about the darker side of the New Age movement? The source paints a pretty terrifying picture of their plans for a new world order and the persecution of Christians. How do we protect ourselves from that?
The source emphasizes the importance of discernment, of being able to recognize and reject the deceptive tactics of the New Age. It's about knowing your own beliefs, being grounded in the truth of God's word, and not being swayed by appealing but ultimately empty promises.
So it's about having a strong spiritual foundation.
Exactly. The source reminds us that we're not in this alone. We have God on our side, and He has already won the victory. We just need to stay connected to Him, to His truth, and to His love.
That's a powerful reminder. It's easy to get caught up in the fear and the darkness, but ultimately we know that light will triumph over darkness. Good will overcome evil.
Exactly. And that knowledge should give us courage and hope as we navigate the challenges of these uncertain times.
Well, I don't know about you, listener, but this deep dive has definitely been a wild ride. We've gone from the symbolism of the triangle to the prophecies of Nostradamus to the potential for global chaos and a New Age takeover. It's a lot to process.
It certainly is. But I think it's important that we engage with these ideas, that we don't shy away from the difficult questions. Because only by understanding the nature of the challenges we face can we effectively respond to them.
Well said. And I want to thank you for guiding us through this complex and often unsettling material. You've helped shed light on a lot of dark corners.
It's been my pleasure, and I encourage everyone listening to continue exploring these topics, to seek out different perspectives, and to always be asking questions.
Great advice. And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought, some new insights, and perhaps even a renewed sense of purpose. Remember, we're all in this together. And together with God's help, we can navigate the challenges ahead and emerge stronger on the other side.
Amen that.
Thanks for joining us. And until next time, keep seeking the truth and stay curious.